Tom Baker said I should rather be covered from head to foot in my own excrement.
And there are 2.5 more hours of Doctor Who coming your way here on WLIW. But right now, we need all of you to go to the phone and pledge.
Yes, it's a cliche, but it's true. One of the first things you notice about Americans is how laid back and friendly they are. All right, you big American f***er.
In 25 minutes, we have Carry On Pedanting, and that's followed at midnight by The Muppets in Follow That Merker. But now on BBC One, it's The Ambassadors of Death with Radio Free Skaro. Can you hear me? Sam Tyler?
We have many guests, so we should press on right now. We have Niamh McIntosh is here today. Dan Starkey's here today. Richard Hope is here today. Stephen Thorne, oh my God, yes, creator of this world, is here. Philip Hinchcliffe, everybody. Yeah. But our first guest is a man who went from stuffing ferrets down his trousers to bringing darkness to the role of the Doctor, perhaps for the first time in the show's history. He has, of course, found great fame and acclaim in The Hobbit as Radagast the Brown. Ladies and gentlemen, our first guest and the first guest of the convention, the 7th Doctor himself, Sylvester McCoy.
My name is Chris.
Yeah. Listen here to me. Hey, Chris, you're great. Can I have some of your height, please? Oh, hello.
Yeah, you can hold it too if you want. Have a seat. Have a
hello,
seat.
Yes. Yes. What are we doing? What's happening?
Well, I'll tell you. We're in Los Angeles, California.
Lost in Los Angeles.
Lost. Have you been lost in Los Angeles before?
Yeah, I have actually.
Yeah?
Yeah, in a car once.
It's easy to.
I'm going the wrong way. Hello.
That's.
Do you two want to meet?
It's in stereo.
I must have worked with these two guys in some science fiction program, I think.
I think you did. It's a tissue compression eliminator.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Or so. Indeed. I love your hat. Every time I've seen you, I know bouncy couches.
Yeah.
They were bouncier last year. I can attest.
All right.
Yeah, they were.
What were you doing in them? How did you find out they were bouncy last year? Anyway, my hat.
Yeah, I love it. You've always worn this hat.
No, not that particular hat.
This
is it was actually given to me today.
Was it really?
Yeah.
By whom?
By whom? Yes. By Pat.
What?
Pat.
Troughton.
Pat, not Troughton.
Oh.
It would have been a miracle if it was Pat Troughton. Wow, wouldn't that be something?
Uh-huh.
That he was hanging out with Elvis all these years. That'd be great, wouldn't it?
That would be. Because you wore a hat just like that to your very
yes,
first...
very similar. Very similar.
Yeah.
I mean, I went for the interview with the hat.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I got the job, because the producer said, wow, I like that hat. I'd like to have that in Doctor Who. And I said, well, I come with a hat. And he said, okay, you better have the job. So that was it, really.
I have to ask, because you did so many things before you became an actor.
Yes.
But one thing that I remember you mentioning once and then just sort of dropping is that you were a bouncer for the Rolling Stones.
Yes.
How? I mean...
Bouncer. See, I'm a bouncer for the Rolling Stones. Yeah. Yes. No, I was. It was 1969, and the Rolling Stones hadn't yet come to America. Uh-huh. They did their last gig in England, Britain, before they came over for the notorious one I can never remember the name.
Altamont.
Altamont, yeah.
Altamont. Altamont.
Altamont.
That's the one.
Albert.
Abyssinia.
Yeah.
the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, there. Anyway, and I had just become an actor. I used to work at the Roundhouse. And when we heard the Stones were coming to the Roundhouse, I phoned them up and said, can I come and do something, help you out on that Sunday night? And can I bring, 5 of my friends? And they said, yeah, great, come on. Yeah, it'll be good. And I arrived and I said, what do I do? They said, well, look, just stand on the stage. And it was that side of the stage. And just keep people off if they get up. That's all. Uh-huh. And there was another smaller man than me on the other side of the stage. He was Canadian, if I remember. And so we stood on the stage, and the Roundhouse was packed to the gills. And it's a round house. It was a round auditorium. And it's surprising, that, isn't it? And they were all packed. And when the music was going, it was like looking at sardines going... That's how I remember it, looking down at them, going... And there was no way anyone could get out of that sardine squash up onto the stage. It was just impossible. So, I was dancing with, Mick Jagger and, all that stuff. Anyway, it was great. So I was a bouncer for the Rolling Stones. I didn't realize my job description meant I had to shoot them or kill them. But that's what happened when they came over to that place. Baltimore.
Altamont.
Altamont.
That's thanks to the health.
Altamont.
Altamont?
Altamont?
Ultimate.
They went to Sweden. Ultimate.
Antibint?
And Adibint? That sounds like Swedish place they went.
So I've got a question. Doctor Who was, at the best times in the old days, budget challenged. And now you've been on a slightly bigger budget movie, The Hobbit. What is the contrast there, going from one to the other? How does that feel?
Well, yes. It's great. I don't have to change in toilets. You get they give you a big Winnebago to lie around in. Just chill out. Think about life. Contemplate getting a psychiatrist. That kind of thing. Whereas Doctor Who, it was great. It was great. And that's how it worked in Britain. There wasn't a lot of money. It was definitely challenged, budget-wise and all sorts of other ways-wise. But it was great also to be in The Hobbit 1. I'm not allowed to talk about The Hobbit 2. Or even The Hobbit 3. I can talk about Hobbit 1. I got a letter last week saying, do not talk about... Or Hobbit.
Right.
So I can't. Budget-wise. No, it's great. I've loved it because I'm an inveterate traveller, and they've flown me. I've flown around the world 5 times to go to New Zealand, back and forward, and each time I've gone, I've lost a day. So I'm now 5 days younger than when I first started the film. Yeah. So I think I might try start a travel company, especially here, in LA, where people, kind of like to lose a bit of age. You know what I mean? So I thought, well, the best way to do it is, I'll just get them to travel around the world that way for about a year, charge them a fortune, and they'll come off, and they'll be a year younger.
Works for me.
It's a good idea.
That's how it's done, I think.
Yeah.
Well, you were on location a lot, though, in your time in Doctor Who. Was that better than being cramped up in a studio all day? Or?
Yes. No, I always loved location more than studio work. The only one that I thought really worked well in the studio was...
Ghostlight.
Yes.
Yes.
How did you read my mind?
I have powers.
I wish.
Oh, thanks
you
to
get in
the
there
hat.
a lot. I can't read half of my mind anymore. Yeah, Ghostlight. I thought that worked really well, but the BBC are very good at building, Victorian sets inside. But they are. It's interesting. British television, American television, really fascinated me in those days, especially because, and even now perhaps, when we are still in Britain hungering for the past. Just look at our television. That's that expresses our cultural preferences. Downton Abbey, all sorts of First World War ones that have just come out recently. Some of them are brilliant. They're not, they're really pretty good. But in America, you're continuously looking to the future. Science fiction programs, which is great. And I often said in Britain when I got back, I said, listen, the thing about America is that they turn science fiction into science fact. That's what drives, and that's really great about But whereas we just continuously look back. And although it's comforting, I enjoy it. I mean, I actually sit there really enjoying it. But at the same time, my mind is thinking, we're not thinking forward. We're harking back to when we were an empire. Don't worry, in about 10 years' time, you'll be doing the same.
We're Canadians, so we...
Canadians, hey!
We're America's hat.
Oh, well, then, your empire will start growing in about 50 years' time, I think.
Exactly. Well, you were in Canada. You were shooting the TV movie in Canada.
That's right, yeah.
How was that experience for you?
Well, that was terrific. It was lovely. It was great. The Canadian crew were just terrific. I enjoyed that very much. And I also enjoyed the fact that I didn't have the responsibility of carrying, the program on me. I could just, just muck around, really. It was great. It was quite interesting, too, because Paul McGann and I, being British actors, we work in the theatre. We do everything. I mean, I've done everything in this business, from street theatre to, busking, right up to grand opera, from, avant-garde theatre, Samuel Beckett, right up, to Shakespeare, from plays, musicals, operettas, everything. The only thing I haven't done is ballet. This was pointed out to me, and now I've got fused ankles. I can't point, so ballet's out.
Just a few more ferrets in the trousers, and you'll be dancing already. So.
Ferrets, done that, been there. That's old hat. No,
that's a new hat.
That's new hat.
And there's no ferret in that one. So, what was I talking about?
Canada?
Yeah.
We are forgettable.
It's a place one can forget. No, it's not. No, I've been to Canada a lot. I love it. I've been to Baffin Island. I've been in the Arctic Circle.
What were you doing there?
Filming in... to go back to the film, it was great. And the thing about it was, we were British actors, Paul and I, and we were used to working very much in theatre. And theatre is a kind of a company job. You have to rely on each other. And there are stars, but generally, basically, it's a deep down... You work as a company. You work with everybody. Whereas in cinema, you don't have to. You don't even have to work with another actor. Especially nowadays with green screen and all the things. I mean, I was working with all these animals. I never saw any. And I didn't realise they were going to upstage me, the bastards, as they did when they were on the screen. Otherwise, I would have nothing to do with them. But anyway, so film is a very different way of communicating with fellow human beings. And so when I was shot, the very last scene that they filmed, not the last scene of my tenure as Doctor Who, but the last scene they filmed, I came out of the TARDIS, I was shot, and I fell down onto the ground into a puddle, and it turned out to be icy. It was an ice puddle, and they put a close-up on me, and I was shaking, and people said, wow, that was brilliant acting. It wasn't. I was just lying in a puddle, freezing to death. Anyway, the makeup lady and the wardrobe lady went to the producer and said, oh, please, could you not make them miss? Because we don't want to lose him. Because we were so friendly, Paul as well. Both of us were really we'd hang out with them, but it didn't seem to be the way that the other, Rob, what's his name, the master?
Eric Roberts.
Yeah, Eric. Because, Eric arrived, and, he looked at his Winnebago, and he said, oh, I need a different coloured carpet. And I thought, oh, God, I've been here for 2 weeks. I didn't know you're supposed to do that.
You all shared Winnebagos back in the BBC days. If you had them.
We didn't have them.
You had a tent.
Yes, a tent. One of those portaloos. Mm-hmm. It looks a bit like a TARDIS.
Like a TARDIS, I was going to say.
With one
vital difference. Some people mixed up the TARDIS with the portaloo. Yeah. Ow, my God.
Do you miss Doctor Who?
No.
No? I mean, you still do it a lot in audio.
I'm doing it. No, I don't miss him. I'm doing it. I've just finished doing a whole series of Big Finish Doctor Who's just recently.
Yeah. And there's a 50th anniversary one with all of you, Peter, yourself, Paul McGann, Tom, and Colin. The Light at the End, I believe it's called. Are you allowed to talk about that?
And then... And that's about as much as I can say.
Really? That's it?
Yeah.
Nick Briggs is here.
Is he? I know he's taller than me.
But he doesn't worry.
He's taller than me.
Don't worry. He can't get you after. Yeah, you can say what you like.
Can I?
Yeah.
Has he said so? Nick, are you there? Come in, Nick. No. Anyway. Yes, I did it. We did it, and it's very exciting. And there's, wonderful surprises in it, I hope, for all of us, Doctor Who fans.
Was it all doctors together? How freeing is it in audio then to sort of expand the character that you created on TV all those years ago?
Well, it's great. I mean, one of the joys is that the sets are stupendous. Because they are everyone's imagination, and all your imaginations can create better sets than we could have ever created in the studios or on location of Doctor Who. So that's terrific about it. And I love doing it. I mean, really, we all love doing it. It gives... you don't have to learn the lines. That's good.
No wardrobe, no makeup?
No makeup.
No makeup
I do.
time,
No,
wardrobe
I
time?
have full makeup.
It's tattooed
I
on.
dress, because the Queen might be listening, so I put on a bow tie and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
What do you say? Can't remember. Could someone translate?
Bow ties are cool.
Bow ties are cool.
Oh, cool! Bow ties! Cool! Yeah. Oh, cool! No, they're quite hot, actually, because, I mean, they get around the corner. Although the ones you can get that spin round, they're quite cool. Yeah. They kind of fan you.
Sweater vests are hot. How long into your tenure did you say, John Nathan, to kind of lose this?
I wanted to lose it. I mean,
I know,
if we'd have done the 4th season, it would have gone.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't at first. I never really liked it.
No.
Although now I quite enjoy it in a way. I can see it's quite. Yeah, it's and people do like it, and that's terrific. I can see it's an interesting sweater. I mean, I was talking today with a great designer who's here, who designed the early Doctor Who's and stuff like that, and we were discussing that sweater. And she hadn't designed my costume, but she was felt the same as I. It was just too much. I thought it was too many question marks, and it raised too many questions. You know, people,
right.
If you know what I mean. Because you come on with all that, people would say, "Why the question marks? So what is it about?" No one ever did, because they're all blind, or they had this eyesight problem. They couldn't see question marks. But anyway, whatever it was. But I would have definitely got rid of it in the 4th season. Because then I was cocky enough to go to the producer and say, "Look, I don't want to wear it." Whereas the first couple of seasons, I didn't want to rock any boats.
Right.
I was too busy rocking the boats in the stories and doing all this stuff. But I liked the umbrella. That was my idea. And the designer, she was saying that today. She thought that was cool and witty. And I thought, oh yeah, I never knew it was witty. But anyway, I liked that. That was my idea.
You're talking about June Hudson, I think, is who you're talking about. Did you meet June Hudson? Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm reading your mind again.
Oh, there it is.
I know. So are you going back to New Zealand then? Any pickups to do for those unmentionable films?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You looking forward to that flight?
I don't know if I'm in the 2 mentionable films, but I'm going back to do something.
Vacation, perhaps.
Clean up the mess I left, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm on a stamp.
Are you really? Oh, yes!
It's rather splendid, really. I'm so proud. I mean, a couple of things have happened to me recently that make me so proud. And one is that I'm on a New Zealand stamp as Radagast the Brown, and I'm going to be on a British stamp as Dr.
Kildare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people are going to be licking the back of my head and stamping my face in 2 continents. Isn't that amazing? I mean, that is amazing, isn't it? It's kind of
Absolutely.
nothing to do with me. It was them that made the. So I think that's really great. And the other thing is, I'm a Lego man.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I never thought as a child I grew up to become a Lego man. That makes me so proud. My son must have had an intuitive thing about that, because a couple of Christmases ago he bought me Lego Guggenheim. You can get Lego do these architectural
ones,
things, and the Guggenheim's one of my favourite buildings. And as children, my sons, when we'd go to New York, the first place we hit was the Guggenheim. I always went there first, and I just love the building, and it's a great thing. And now I built, and also I love Lego. I used to fight with the boys who was going to build the castle. Get off! I'm doing it. That was them hitting me, and I was the one who was crying. So it was a great delight to actually build the Guggenheim myself. What a joy. And now I've got Lego Guggenheim, and I've got Lego me standing outside Lego Guggenheim.
You've arrived. Well, Sylvester, it's been lovely having you on the show today.
I'm on a show?
You're on the show. This is being recorded right
now. Oh, my
now.
God.
I know.
It's all lies.
But enjoy the rest of the convention. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. And enjoy your bottle of water that I opened up for you. So, Sylvester McCoy, everybody.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Sylvester McCoy! There. I want it to state for the record, those that know me, Sylvester brought up the Lego, not me.
Yes.
All right? Well, no, it's apparently a toy that kids play with. I'm not too sure why people think that. I'm 38, Sylvester. I love Lego, let me tell you. Oh, I'm proud. There we go. Sylvester McCoy, everybody. Yes. Our next guest became producer of Doctor Who at age 29. The first story broadcast, the second episode of which, The Ark in Space, achieved the highest charting results, number 5, in the history of the show until Christmas of 2007. It launched the golden age of Doctor Who. It made Tom Baker a star. It made the show a cult hit and a worldwide phenomenon. It is not an exaggeration to say that we would not be in this room today to celebrate Doctor Who if it was not for the work of this man who we're about to introduce to you. It is my great pleasure to introduce to Radio Free Skaro and to Gallifrey One, producer Philip Hinchcliffe. I mentioned that, the Ark in Space, and it was that instantaneous, wasn't it, that the reaction sort of went through the roof when you started taking over on Doctor Who?
Yeah, it was. I remember we worked for a month or two with Tom. We started filming, I think, in the October. And you'll tell me when Ark in Space went out. I can't remember. But Tom kept, every week we'd be doing something. And he said, "Do you think it's going all right, Philip?" And I said, "Yeah, you just carry on doing the same thing, Tom. You're fine. Don't mumble and look at the camera and cut some of the jokes that he was trying to get in." I said, "Other than that, it's terrific." And I said, "Tom, you've got to get ready because when the first episode of Ark in Space goes out, your life is going to change forever." He said, "Do you think so?" And I said, "Yeah, you really got to get ready for this, Tom." And he didn't believe me. I mean, he was working on a building site, probably you know this story, and cast, as the Doctor. So his life had gone from him, and he was sleeping on Waterloo Station for some of the time. And so the first episode went out, and he came in. He used to come in on the tube. What do you call that? The underground? The tube?
We all understand.
He used to come in to the rehearsal rooms on the tube. And he came in this one day. He said, "Do you know," he said, "everybody was looking at me on the tube." And it just happened. That episode went out, and he was famous overnight. So...
Yeah, I think you said in the past that it was sort of a word of mouth thing amongst the college students, which is an audience that never really grasped onto Doctor Who. Did they sort of sense a connection to this weird, bizarre hero of the show now with this weird scarf and tall hair?
I think so. I think that's right, yeah. And I began to get letters coming in from not, 10-year-olds, but university students, and they were writing in, and I thought, oh, yeah, this is a new audience that we've got here. And I think that the fact that Tom was a bit more sort of bohemian, and it was part of the zeitgeist, wasn't it? Sort of early 70s. And he seemed to... Well, I guess that generation had grown up. And suddenly they had a Doctor that they could perhaps identify with more. He was quite young. Yeah, that happened, definitely.
Well, more from a grandfather to a peer, I suppose.
Pardon?
More from a grandfather to a peer.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. Wait, so how long did you trail Barry Letts for then, before you actually took on the job full time?
I was very fortunate because am I too near or too far? Is this good?
That's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
I was very fortunate because I was given the job at the BBC, and I was actually given another program to produce first, which had been set up. the producer couldn't get the director he wanted, so he stormed off and said he didn't want to do it. So the head of department gave me this show to produce, and so I started to do that. And funnily enough, I cast Mary Tam in this show. It was a Muriel Spark book, you know, the lady who wrote Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. And she wrote this other book called The Girls of Slender Means about young women in London during the war. And there's this beautiful character who's really a rather slightly evil character, actually. And Maura Armstrong, the director, and myself cast Mary Tam. And anyway, I was about to produce that, and we had a strike. We had strikes at the BBC in those days, production assistants.
I've never heard of any BBC strike ever.
It was one of the biggest strikes they ever had, and so a whole slew of programs were cancelled, including this one. So that freed me up to then follow Barry for much longer. So I had several months, and I just sort of went around, because I was learning not only about the program, but this was my first job as a fully fledged producer. I'd been a script editor and then a sort of an associate producer, but this is the first show that I produced. So I had to learn A, how to be a producer, and B, how the BBC worked, because I'd been working in a smaller company in one of the sort of the commercial television in England. So I was very grateful. Yeah, so about two or 3 months I was following him around.
So at what point did you look at everything and go, I am going to sweep the broom clean and make my own version of Doctor Who? Well, I mean, because it was a marked departure from the Barry Letts era into yours.
I think the trick with a program like Doctor Who is I realized that it had already become an institution, been running for about 11 years. And so what you do is you sort of work out, well, what are the core values of this show? What really makes it work that it would be very foolish to tamper with? And I think I worked out what those things were. And then I thought, well, yes, but I would like to take this into certain new areas. And I've spoken about this before. I wanted to get a little bit more sort of sci-fi into it and take it into other areas away from the way they'd handled it with John Pertwee. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So most of your first season was already in place before you even took over, is that right?
Yeah, the actual scripts had been, because they weren't sure what was happening with the Doctor, they had to have a new Doctor, they had a new producer, so Bob Holmes, my wonderful script editor, was...
Yes. No, he's not doing a walk-on, I assure you. But
he'd been charged with getting some scripts in, and because they didn't know what was happening, they thought, well, let's go back to the old favourites. So they said, well, we'll have a Cyberman story, we'll have a Dalek story. And I wasn't very keen on either of those, but anyway, I inherited them. And what I did with the Dalek story was, I mean, it was a very good story, but I said to the director, David Maloney, look, we want to make this differently. We want to give it a different feel somehow. And, well, I don't know whether you think that happened or not, but there was something about the pacing of the show, just the sort of the narrative of the story, the speed, the look of it, the lighting. We just tried to make it a little bit more compelling as a Dalek story rather than just Pepper Potts trundling around. And although they did trundle around. And so the Cyberman story, that was done, and then this Ark in Space story, that didn't work out. And I suppose the first decisive thing I really did before, as I had taken over, was to say, look, we've got to chuck these scripts out completely, and Bob, you're going to write this, aren't you? So I had to go to the BBC, because being a script editor in those days, you weren't allowed to really write your own scripts for your own series. So I went to my boss and said, look, this is absolutely essential. Bob Holmes must write this story, and he's got to get it done within the next 3 weeks. And so I twisted my boss's arm, and that's in a way how Bob and I then shaped a story that was more in our own sort of style, I suppose.
Did you sort of see it as a reboot to the series in a way? Just because, it leaves all the unit years behind, and it's I don't know if you intended this or not, but it's very much like a William Hartnell story, in that it's the TARDIS crew lands on a spaceship, and it's just them for the first episode exploring around. It just seems to be a bit of a reset. Was that a creative intention on your part?
Partly, but again, that had been really thought through by Bob. And what they were trying to do was to sort of save money on the sets. So they thought, well, we can do a story on this set the Doctor can disappear and then he can come back again, and it's another time, and we can reuse the set. And also it released more outside filming, because by doing more footage in the studio, it meant that we could do that two-parter all on OB. Mm-hmm. And that was part of a bigger strategy, which Bob had worked out, and I agreed with, which is that the six-parters that had been very much in the show up to that time, they used to flag, that there's a sort of narrative sort of flagging on a six-parter. It's very difficult, whereas the four-parters work better. Mm-hmm. I think, we're in Hollywood. If you think of the natural length of a movie, it's about 100 minutes, 120 minutes, and that equates to about 4 episodes of this, of our series. So we try to get rid of the six-parters, or else, because we had to fit it into 26 weeks. So we would do like a dog-leg story. We'd do a two-parter and then a four-parter. Mm-hmm. And that was a conscious decision. And so that fitted in with doing 4 episodes on this space station and then the 2 outside.
Right. But Genesis of the Daleks that you mentioned before is interesting, because there's a lot of similar hallmarks of like Terry Nation's scripts, just the way that things happen, but there are just some distinctive Hinchcliffian, Holmesian hooks to it. I mean, did you really sort of hack that one?
Tell me, what are they?
Well, certainly David Maloney's direction. I mean, the slow motion massacre at the beginning there was something that you had never seen in Doctor Who before, and just the darkness and the lighting and the whole aspects. It was a very the Nazi.
Well, that was very intentional, and David and I did discuss that. I mean, David was a veteran, and I was lucky in a way that I inherited some very, very good directors, most of whom had been set up before I joined. David, I think was already there.
He had done a couple, at least, in the Pertwee era.
Yeah, but I think he was slotted in. He was scheduled.
Right.
Rodney Bennett I chose, and Dougie Camfield I persuaded.
Yeah, because he had been in since 1970. Was that a bit of a struggle to get him back to the show?
Yeah, but he and I really... good thing for me was that I really hit it off well with David Maloney. I really hit it off well with Dougie Camfield, and so I was able to bring these guys back. It's worth saying that, Doctor Who was a poison chalice at the BBC. It was such a difficult show to make, and you didn't get great return on it for your career, really, if you're a director or a producer. The reason I ended up as a producer, I'm sure, is because 2 or 3 guys were offered the job and didn't want to do it, I'm sure. And I was this sort of, junior guy that nobody knew about who sort of was given a chance. And so part of my job was to persuade these veteran directors that it would be exciting and different now that I was in the chair and would be worth doing. And I think I succeeded, because for 3 years I managed to bring these guys back. And if you like, I think part of the producer's job is it's a bit like being a football manager. It's how do you get the best out of your players? How do you get them to raise their game when they're doing the same thing? And so that's one of the things that I inherited, but then sort of turned to an advantage, really, by my relationship with these directors.
Now, season 13, your second one, that's the one that you had first, full control over, and that's really when the Gothic horror sort of came. And was that when did that you and Bob Holmes sort of go after that tactic?
Well, we never used the word Gothic. That's something that came along.
It's come along afterwards.
Later, I think that one of the sort of happy synchronicities of my time is that Bob was interested in scaring the little children as much as possible, and I had this sort of interest in a sort of more mysterious fantasy sort of side and the sci-fi side. And so I think I think if I'd been left to choose all the story ideas, the seasons wouldn't have been as good. I think if Bob had been left on his own to choose, without anyone restraining him, I think things would have gone more awry than they did. And Mary Whitehouse would have been up in arms even more. But there was something about the two of us that we collaborated at the very early creative, what's the basic idea that we can do here? And there was just something that worked between us, a sort of synergy. And,
Was it an argumentative relationship that you had with him? No. It was even when you disagreed on something. Did you ever disagree with him on something?
Only with degree. Sometimes he'd want to go too far with something, but no, fundamentally, no.
That synergy leads me into The Deadly Assassin, which I regard as a masterpiece. But what I want to know is, it shouldn't work, but it does. Like, there's so many elements that aren't like Doctor Who, but somehow it all comes together. Did you guys know what you had when you put it together, or was it just kind of a day at the office?
No, we didn't. Elizabeth Sladen said she wanted to leave the series, so we knew she was leaving. We knew we were going to get a new assistant in. We weren't quite sure who, but we had ideas about what we were going to do. And so Tom came up to me and said, "Do I really need an assistant, Philip? Can't I just talk to myself?" And I said, "Well, not really, Tom. You know, you can't. You know, you need a sort of confidant, a Sprechhund, or somebody. You know." But I said, "Look, we can do one." And because I thought to myself, "What the hell? Why don't we just do? This is a very robust format. It's a wonderful portmanteau format that you can do anything in, really." And so what I said was, "Look, we'll do something really different here, and you know, we got the opportunity not to have an assistant." And I literally said to Bob, "I'd like you to write this." And again, I had to go and ask permission, but managed to get it. And I said, "I want to do something completely and utterly different. Let's just go for it and really let our hair down and do something completely weird and completely different." And I sort of had this kind of notion that I wanted to do a story where somehow the Doctor had unwittingly done something wrong. I mean, why did he get kicked out of, you know, Gallifrey? Why was he this rebel? I mean, what was going on there? So that was the sort of base. And in fact, I know I had that idea because it also underpinned the Face of Evil. If you see, you know, with the Mount Rushmore head, that was, you know, me. That was my idea. So I must have fed the same idea to Bob, and said, "Let's go with this." And he said, "Well, we've got to have a proper protagonist. You know, it really ought to be the Master." And I said, "Oh, well, no, not really. Not the Roger Delgado kind of character. We can't do that." "No," he said, "we can do something completely different." And I said, "Okay, right, all right, we've got that. Off you go." And literally, I said, "Go away. I don't want to hear from you. You know, just fill me in now and again, and just whatever you do, just enjoy yourself." And so he kind of checked in, you know, during each episode, and that's how we did it. And I must say that I was rather, what's the word? Yeah, I was suspicious of the virtual reality. I mean, that, you know, the virtual reality idea was, I'm sure it existed somewhere in, you know, in science fiction, but you know, it took until The Matrix before we saw it really done here. And I always think, for example, Alien was really Ark in space, but a bit too late. Right. So there's nothing new in this area. But I was worried that the virtual reality wouldn't work. I thought, well, you know, it's all in the mind. But I must say, David and Bob said, "No, look, it will do. Once you're in there, it'll have a reality of its own." And they were absolutely right.
And a real surreality as well.
Surreal, yeah.
Surreal
yeah, some of these odd things like the Japanese warrior, and I loved all that.
Which freaks me out to this day.
Pardon?
The clown.
The laughing clown.
Oh, yeah, right.
Clown in the sand.
I've forgotten the laughing clown.
Yeah, I know. You've forgotten the laughing clown.
Oh, well.
Lord knows I've tried to forget the laughing clown.
How dangerous a prospect is it to do something completely different?
It was really dangerous.
As far as the audience goes, losing the audience or having the press revolt?
Well, I just thought, you know, it's a very strong, robust format. Why can't you do something a bit more imaginative? I don't think we could do it every story, but why not? And Bob said, "I don't like all those Time Lord, you know, Eastern mystical Time Lords," because Barry Letts was all into, you know, Buddhism and all that. And Bob said, "I don't like all that. That's rubbish, rubbish, rubbish." So I said, "Well, what are you going to do?" He said, "Well, you know, they're much more cynical than that, you know." So he sort of invented this kind of like a sort of, it was a bit like a sort of Oxford and Cambridge college of these rather sort of irascible dons, you know. And I didn't really like it that much, but I quite liked the media guy, you know. And I mean, listen, it was tongue in cheek, really. So, whether you like it or not, that's what Bob created for the Time Lords.
Right. Now, that one, you mentioned Mary Whitehouse, that was the one that sort of broke the camel's back when it came to her with the end of episode 3 with the,
yes.
Bernard Horsfall choking him under the water and basically
yes.
forcing you to edit the episode. Were you aware of how far you could push the bar, and did you realize that maybe you went too far there, or did you?
I don't think I did go too far.
Uh-huh.
I think if you see it in context, it was the era of I can't remember the exact dates, but in movies like Straw Dogs, Bonnie and Clyde, there was a sort of liberalisation of violence and generally sort of pushing the envelope, and we had a series called The Sweeney, which was quite brutal compared with the Softly and Z Cars. Things were moving in that direction. Obviously, you've got to be very aware of your audience, and I think that I think the problem with Mary Whitehouse was that she's right to be concerned that you've got to respect the audience and have a good sense of what's acceptable. But I think she was trying to micromanage where that boundary occurred, and I felt that I was making good judgments as a producer and that this was okay to go as far as I went. And on that particular episode, I looked at it. I was happy with the cut that we did, but I flagged it up to my head of series, Bill Slater, and said, look, you better just look at this, Bill, and see what you say. He said, as far as I remember, I think he said it was okay, and we went out with it. The thing is that the children and the audience, they know the Doctor's not going to die, But of course, I suppose young children maybe, are more worried than others, and that was her concern. But I think when it was repeated, they then did the edit. And I think the problem is the BBC were on the run. She'd got the BBC on the run on a number of fronts. And I think this just became the stick that she used to beat the BBC with.
Your last one, The Talons of Wang Chiang, is regarded as one of the great stories of all time, like so many others. Did you know it was your last one? And because of that, did you pull out all the stops just to make that one as good as possible to sort of go out on?
Yes, at the time I thought it would be the last one.
Yeah. And so, how did you get? Because there's the OB production, in the theater and everything, and in the night filming, and these were things that were not normally seen in Doctor Who. I mean, the budget must have been astronomical.
No, the budget was straightforward budget. But I guess we robbed Peter to pay Paul a bit from some of the other stories. But no, it was just the normal budget.
Really?
And it came in pretty much on budget.
It looked fantastic.
Yeah.
I imagine you were happy with it.
I was very happy. The thing that I got wrong in that show was that and it was too late because we had no post-production. So once you shot something, that was it. Was that the giant rat was too cuddly, and it was lit a bit too high, highlighting, and we should have just chucked buckets of water over it. Basically, there was enough water around because we had water in the tunnels, and it flooded the BBC telephone system. Nobody could phone the BBC or phone out. We were busy recording in the studio, and people came rushing in saying, stop. So I missed a trick there, because I think if we just mudded it down and put lots of water on it, the rat would have been more convincing. But I was very proud of the show, yeah, very much so, and I loved. And again, I think the best thing I ever did was to force the issue, to allow Bob to have a sort of swan song story. And also this time I gave him a little bit longer to do it, not that long. Right. But he had a little bit longer, and so I think he could just go away and enjoy it rather than feeling terrible pressure. Mm-hmm. And I think that probably showed in the script. Yeah.
Did you? 3 years does not seem like a long time. Were you done at that point? Were you ready to move on from Doctor Who? Or?
I was pretty much ready to move on, and so was Bob. And we were told that we were going to move on. And then suddenly we were told, no, we'd like you to do another season. So we even began to just think about another season. And then the politics of the BBC meant that no, we were going to move on after all. So yeah, it was a sort of uncertain period, really. But I thought for a long time that would be my last one, and yeah, I was ready to move on.
Mm-hmm. What was your proudest moment then of the 3 years on Doctor Who that you did? Was there any one that you can actually pinpoint?
I didn't have time to be proud. I was so busy. I mean, I don't think I had a holiday for 3 years.
Right.
Well, no, that's not true, but I mean, probably a fortnight. I mean, it was absolutely non-stop because you were sort of making it for good 9 or 10 months of the year, probably, and that downtime when you were, scripting and all the rest of it, it was absolutely full on. But I loved it. I mean, it was, I don't know. I guess I was proud of the whole thing, that we had increased the audience. We had energized the show in a different way. I mean, I think a test of whether the show succeeds is not just, how big the audience is, but I mean, this is a show for young people as well as adults. And I think if you can be genuinely imaginative in the show, so that you do some good work in it, I think that's the legacy you leave, really. And I think, parts of the seasons that I did had that quality in it. I wouldn't say it was a bit patchy, uneven, because of the budgets and the production techniques we had available at the time. But the thing is that the Doctor Who audience, we didn't have so many fans in those days, but the Doctor Who audience sort of loved the show, and so there is this special relationship that it has, and you're very aware of that when you're making it, and you sort of ignore that at your peril. So I guess I got that bit right as well, I think, yeah.
Well, I mean, I was not exaggerating in my intro that your time on the show was the golden age of Doctor Who, and Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat both cite your era as ones that they sort of want to try and recreate or at least draw upon when in
well,
the
I think
bottom.
they've both done fantastic work. When the first episode that Russell Davies, when he brought the show back, I didn't really know him, and I rang him up and said that was fantastic. And I knew Christopher Eccleston because I'd cast him in something else. And I said, that absolutely wonderful, Russell. I'm so blown away by it. And what I think I was most impressed by was the way that they had completely found a style of speeding up the narrative for the taste of the modern audience. But he'd also done something that had never happened before in Doctor Who, because it kind of wasn't really the format of the time, which was he'd managed to bring in more sort of real heartfelt emotion, particularly in the relationship with Doctor and the Doctor and his, the companion. And there was just another level of sentiment running through. And I thought that was a wonderful thing for Russell to achieve. And then Stephen, Moffat has sort of carried on that. So I haven't watched a lot of the very latest ones, but that when it first came back, I thought that was a major achievement. It really was fantastic.
Well, I have to say, Philip, on behalf of I know the three of us and most of the people in this room, their first viewing of Doctor Who was something from 1975 to 77, and it's all because of you. And so we thank you for producing a wonderful show, and we thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much.
Philip Hinchcliffe, everybody.
Thank you.
Standing ovation for Philip Hinchcliffe. The man knows television, doesn't he?
Oh, yes.
Our next guest has never been seen in Doctor Who, more or less, without a ton of makeup on or a mask that was 10 feet tall. But his unmistakable voice and presence really created three dynamic roles in The Demons, in The Hand of Fear, and especially the best Omega, Warren, in The Three Doctors. It's our pleasure to announce to you the wonderful Mr. Stephen Thorne, everybody. And you're tall in real life, too. That just makes it even better.
Indeed I am.
I would hate if you were like really small or something. It'd be television tricking me all these years.
Oh, I know. I go to the theatre and I turn around and I say to the people behind me, would you like me to remove my head?
Yeah. How did you become involved in Doctor Who then all those years ago in the Demons?
I was asked by Barry Letts to be the voice of Azal in the Demons. Was the first show I did, and I went along and went to the rehearsals, and I discovered that Azal in the body was going to be played by a friend of mine called Michael Kilgarriff. And unfortunately, when Barry saw how tall I was and heard my voice, he said, well, you can do both, really, so we don't really need Michael. So he's never really forgiven me for that. He has. We're great friends. And we appeared together as the Ogroms.
You were an Ogron, that's right, of course. Yeah, that was that in Day of the Daleks or Frontier in Space? I can't remember now.
Yes, I can't remember either. They're very peculiar, the Ogrons, because there were lots of Ogrons, but I think there were only 2 or possibly 3 who actually spoke.
Right.
And when there are lots of you, all with the same mask and the same head and the same clothes on, you have to be very careful because you think you're talking to, for instance, my friend Michael Kilgarriff, and you're not talking to him at all. You're talking to somebody equally tall who's not him, and you've said the wrong thing, and so you have to be very wary.
Mm-hmm. What was it like to be caked in all that makeup then for Zal?
It was the most probably uncomfortable costume I've ever had to wear, with hooves and a back wig, a chest wig, horns. Now, there's the story I tell of drinking too much coffee, but I had nails, those false nails, put on great things, very early in the morning, and I couldn't go to the canteen or anything because I couldn't really hold anything properly. But friends bought me coffee and I sort of sipped it.
Right.
And they bought me too much coffee and I obviously had to go and find some way of getting rid of it. So I went down the hall to them, pushed open the door of the men's room, and of course arrived and stood there thinking, I'm not really a surgeon, but I might become one if I'm not careful. So I had to go all the way back to makeup with my legs crossed and ask them to remove these things so that I could do the necessary.
Right.
So that was an added hazard.
Mm-hmm. And most of your work on that, if not all of it, was all in front of blue screen, I suppose, on the other side of the studio. What was that like as an acting experience?
Very peculiar. It was the first time I'd done that. I mean, it was sort of cutting edge then, those days, but it was very peculiar, and you had to have sight lines and things, and, well, it's peculiar because nobody else is there.
Right. But they are there because you shot it live, right? Like, and they sort of piped you in live in the studio.
That's right.
Very strange.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is many people who work on the Demons or who worked on it cite that as their favorite story because they all went to this little English village to shoot for a week and a half.
That's right.
Of course, the only person who involved in the production who didn't go was you. So
I know.
Did you hear of all these tales when they all came back to the studio?
I did. Yes, I had all. I never got to go there until when was it? A couple of years ago. There was a reunion of the Demons people in the village, and I did get to go to that.
Right.
So that was the only time I actually went there.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned Ogrons, of course, but I mean, your most famous role in Doctor Who is as Omega in the Three Doctors with the huge mask and the great big voice. As Al would proclaim, but Omega, being creator of a world, would really bellow out. I mean, were you given free rein by Lenny Mayne, the director, to
Well, I
give it
was
your all?
really, yes. But I mean, it was difficult because there's a great, not skill exactly, but an important thing you have to know about masks is that the mask does half the work. So if you're not careful, you go way over the top. Mm-hmm. And also, if you're not careful, you go way underneath and underplay it because the mask is being horrendously awful and dreadful, and you're sounding very small.
Right.
So that would look very peculiar. And so until I saw the mask, I wasn't really quite sure. I mean, I did a big voice for it, but until I saw that mask, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do.
Was that all boom mic, or did you have like a wireless mic at all inside? Or?
No, it was all with the boom thing.
So you had to project then, basically.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So it was all a lot of shouting.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was it like working with both Patrick Troughton and John Pertwee?
It was great. They were wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was the energy? Because I mean, it was never been done before. They had 2 doctors on set, and
no. Pertwee used to get quite cross with Pat Troughton, who's a wonderful, mercurial man.
Right.
And he was a great stickler, Pertwee, for knowing exactly where he was. And in that mask, it was very difficult to see my marks. Mm-hmm. So I'd sometimes be 6 inches out or whatever, and Pertwee would come and say, "Excuse me, you're just move a bit that way." And Troughton would say, "What are you doing?" And he'd say, "Well, I can't see the camera. Or Stephen's in the way." He said, "Well, it's not you they've come to see, it's the monster. That's what they want."
Right. So was it tough then? Because I mean, like John Pertwee would know his lines and where other actors' cues would end, and that's when he would start his lines. And Patrick Troughton would throw him off all the time because he would just be, as long as he got the general impression. Did he throw you off at all then, Troughton? No. I mean, he didn't really throw Pertwee off either. He pretended he did. Exaggerated over the years. Mm-hmm. What else do you remember from the 3 doctors?
What do I remember? But when he removes his helmet and there's nothing there, I had a yellow sock virtually over my head. And we came to do that scene, and nothing happened because someone was supposed to cue me. And I presumed I said, would somebody tap me on the foot, which was because I couldn't see anything. Mm-hmm. But they'd forgotten that, and the studio manager was standing there going, "Why isn't he moving?"
Right.
Said the director.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually someone had to crawl along and tap my foot.
Right.
Yes. And that's right. There was the producer's run of that. There's a very loud screaming shout when he discovers that he's lost his head. And I was asked by who was it who asked me? It was no, God, I'll forget my own name in a minute. I can't remember. Anyway, he said, "Would you mind toning that down a minute? Because I brought my children in to see this, and they were very frightened at that point, and I don't want the viewers' children to be equally terrified, so if you just bring that down."
Right.
And I said, that's very difficult, because this man has just discovered he's disintegrating in front of his own eyes. Mm-hmm. So that was another memory of that. But it was great fun. Mm-hmm. It was a wonderful part to play.
You worked with Lenny Mayne on that one, and then your last on screen in the classic series on The Hand of Fear. What was he like to work with?
He was great.
Yeah.
He was great. Mm-hmm. Very bouncy and full of energy and invention.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, he even he would swear a lot on set. That's what
I
think.
Yes.
That's what Liz
Yes.
that was
Liz
Sladen
sort of
said. Yeah.
Australian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what was it like then to work on your last one, The Hand of Fear, then, a couple of years after that? Again in makeup.
Yes. That was very peculiar, because I never met my female half until it was finished, and Lenny Mayne took us both out to dinner. That was the first time I'd met her.
Oh, really?
Really? So there was no sort of way of me sort of copying anything that she might have done to, make a point.
Because you are technically playing the same person,
yes, that's right, yes. Mm. That was equally, well, no, not as uncomfortable as Azal, but incredibly uncomfortable because it was a sort of latex costume, and the feet were green Wellington boots. And it was so hot that when I took them off, there was a sort of half pint of water poured out of them. But apart from that, that was all right, yes.
You're a thin man today, possibly because of your work in Doctor Who costumes. That might be it.
Yes, yeah. I owe my sylph-like figure to that.
Right. Did you ever have a moment where you said, I've had it with these damn masks. Could you please give me a roll where my face is visible?
Sorry?
Did you ever have a moment where you said, I've had it with these damn masks? Can I just have something where you see me?
One did start to feel like that, yes. And I used to think I can never come to anything like this because no one will know who I am. At last I made it. Thank you for having me.
We all know who you are. How was Tom Baker like to work with then?
Oh, yes. He was amazing. He was amazing. I mean, he and Pertwee, I suppose, were quite amazing because they were two people at whose feet one used to sit. I mean, they would start talking, and you know, Tom, and you just listen to amazing tales. As with Pertwee, you would listen to absolutely amazing stories.
Yeah.
I didn't really get to know John Pertwee until we did the radio series, The Heroes of End Space.
Yeah, The Ghosts of End Space, yeah.
And I spent a lot of time with him there. And I kept all the scripts of those. And Nick Courtney said to me, you should keep the scripts because you can use them for charitable auctions and things. And I never had kept the television scripts because, I mean, I didn't know there was going to be another one and that it would still be going now in those days. Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. So I asked John Pertwee if he very kindly signed my scripts. He said yes. And I said, just one thing, John. I said, would you mind reducing the size of your signature just a little bit? Because he would sign scripts, John Pertwee, right across, huge. And I said, because I'd like the other members of the cast to sign it as well, leave room. I said, but you can make it abundantly obvious that you're the star. And he said, right. So off I went to do a scene and whatever. And I came back and he said, I've signed all your scripts. And I said, oh, thank you. And sure enough, very neatly, next to his name on the cast list, he'd written John Pertwee, brackets AOIS in very large letters. I said, what's that? He said, abundantly obvious, I'm the star.
And that was John.
Yeah.
Which was your favorite of your roles then on Doctor Who, do you think?
Favorite role?
Yeah.
Oh, it has to be Omega, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Because it was the biggest and most fun to do. And in fact, I mean, I can, I suppose, technically say I played a Time Lord.
You played
which he was.
The original. The original one.
Yes, the original. Yes. The Trailblazer.
Were you asked to come back because they brought Omega back 10 years after that?
They did. No, I wasn't. That happened. I had no idea at all that it had happened until after it had happened.
Oh, no offense.
It was too late to say why.
Oh, yeah, I suppose so. Well, no offense to Ian Collier, but I think you were the definitive Omega.
Maybe I wasn't available. Maybe I was doing something else.
Right, yeah, somebody applauded there. You were the definitive Omega, I tell you, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, Stephen Thorne, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Stephen Thorne, everybody. Omega. Was anybody here last year for our show? Good. I don't know if you remember, but Chip, our engineer extraordinaire over there, he made us laugh, he made us cry with his tribute to Gallifrey, with his little version of his 2-Minute Time Lord podcast live, and he's been ever so gracious to grace us again with an edition of it. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Chip, the 2-Minute Time Lord.
Can you hear me? Am I too loud? I am too loud a little bit. I have a confession to make. I am a 42-year-old adult, and I am a devoted fan of a low-budget family science fiction show that's ancient in TV terms, but is beloved and influential to this day. But I also like Doctor Who. And so do these three guys. And so do you. So do about 3,500 of you. Once a year, the center of Doctor Who fandom is not in Cardiff. It is not at the Fitzroy Tavern. It is not even in a junkyard owned by I.M. Foreman. Once a year, see it? You are here. You are here. That's the center of Doctor Who fandom once a year. Los Angeles. Believe that? And this year, this is going to be the kickoff to one heck of a party, because you might have heard that something's happening in November. Doctor Who's 50th birthday. There are other science fiction properties that have been around for longer than Doctor Who. There are other science fiction properties that have been around for almost as long as Doctor Who and have had arguably a little more worldwide influence. But Doctor Who, damn it, it's ours. This is our show. This is our fandom. Now, let's put it all in perspective. In 1963, the first airing of An Unearthly Child was not necessarily the only thing that happened in that slightly busy year. Doctor Who was born in 1963. What else was born in 1963? Push-button telephones, born in 1963. 5-digit zip codes, born in 1963. Lava lamps and tape cassettes, born in 1963. Michael Jordan and Johnny Depp, born in 1963. Alex Kingston and Russell T. Davies, born in 1963. Lawrence of Arabia, not born in 1963, but Best Picture. The NHL entry draft, born in 1963. There you are, Stephen. We lost an American president in 1963, but before I get to that woman right there, Vostok 6, launched into space. Valentina Tereshkova, first woman in space. 1963. And we did lose a president, but we also had an amazing event in a year of sit-in protests and riots. A preacher from Georgia went to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and proclaimed the end of racial segregation. 1963 was a heck of a year. And against that backdrop of history, it may seem a little inconsequential to be celebrating, a TV show that first aired. But unlike a lot of those elements, like tape cassettes, Doctor Who is still with us. Doctor Who is still on the air, absent a couple of slight interruptions. And it is a show that is devoted to history itself, while it also teaches our kids to look ahead to the future. This is our show. This is our fandom. And this is our convention. And this is your convention. No matter how long you've been watching the show, no matter who your doctor is, Gallifrey One is your convention. If your first doctor was William Hartnell, if you discovered Doctor Who because you were a Torchwood fan, this is your fandom. This is your convention. If you ship the 10th Doctor and Rose, if you ship Turlough and Captain Jack, sorry, if you are an anti-shipper, if you ship the 4th Doctor and a shoulder-mounted head of cabbage, this is your fandom and this is your convention. If you know all the production codes, Mind of Evil,
FFF.
If you are rocking a 6th Doctor skirt, if you love Doctor Who, but if you have ideas that the show could better represent characters who do not look or act like the four of us on this stage at this moment. This is your fandom. This is your convention. There are 3,200 of us here. And if you're new to Galley, if this is your first year, I promise you will find your tribe. However, just as Doctor Who's different from 1963 to 2013, all of our different tribes of fandom are different. I urge you, in this crowded and excited convention, be patient with each other, be kind to each other, respect each other, especially in the autograph lines, but above all, remember that 50 years of time and space, all of time and space, are coalescing here in this hotel in this single West Coast city. This is your fandom. This is your convention. Welcome home.
Chip, everybody! The 2-minute Time Lord!
Now back to work.
Wonderful stuff, Chip. Thank you again. I wait until he gets back to the board and assumes his unavoidable place. 2-minute Time Lord. Numeral 2-minute Time Lord on Twitter. Follow him. He's wonderful. One of our great friends. One of the best podcasts out there. Our last segment features not one guest but three in the greatest show in the galaxy. We have three people who have appeared in the new series, and all behind makeup, and all to great acclaim. We have Richard Hope, Niamh McIntosh, and Dan Starkey. Everyone, please welcome them. Niamh McIntosh, Richard Hope, Dan Starkey, hello. I'm Stephen.
I'm Warren.
Yeah, right down there. I'll do this right here because there we are. So I have to ask. I know it is. It's a bouncy couch, I tell you. You're gonna bounce more down off the couch there if you keep doing that. So my first question is, between the three of you, who do you think has the longest makeup job before going on camera as Doctor Who?
You think me? Probably, no.
Yeah.
Well, I reckon at 3 hours.
Yeah, I'm about 3, maybe 3.5 sometimes.
I think you were 3.5, but 3 3/4 with hands.
Oh, yes. The first time that I did it, I had to have hands on, and they took an extra hour to add on, so yeah.
I have trousers that take about an hour to get on as well.
Oh, yeah, the trousers.
Which cause me more discomfort.
Right. Well, I mean, what is it like to wear that huge... Like, at what point does your head end and the mask begin? It's a wonderful makeup job.
It's like having... it's a bit like a thumb, actually, with a face cut out of it. And it's like a... it's like a big mushroom on your head with the face cut out, and then the mask gets stuck onto my face on top of it, and then most of the actual 3 hours is then blending it together to make it all look all nice and sort of organic. But yeah, it's basically like having a pillow on your head. So it's when I've got about 2 inches of latex either side of my ears, it's slightly muffled, actually hearing people speak. So it's...
Right. What is that Solarian makeup like? Because that is like, it's part of your skin. It's just really...
Yeah, it's so... unlike Dan's, which is just one huge piece. Silurians we've got... Well, this year I had a neck, which was rather nice. And then you've got a big bit that fits on the back, and then a really fine piece that goes on, so it does move. Everything moves on the front. Yeah, and it all gets stuck completely down around every little nook and cranny.
Right. And yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, so every day for the Silurians, it comes in those pieces, as Niamh said. But the front part, which is just the face, is the very thin piece, which is a new piece every day. And on your eyes and your lips, the latex is so thin that they cut that at the very last minute, and then they match that in with makeup. So it's a very slow, long job. But so it fits your face completely.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
And also, carry on from that, the actual face part gets changed every time, but we have to reuse the headpiece. So that lasts for either 2 or 3 sort of days filming. And if you can imagine, it's quite spongy rubber. and I do perspire somewhat inside it. And putting it back on again, so like 2 or 3 times on, it doesn't smell good. So I'm a bit of a stinky Sontaran. So
Now, all three of you sort of, I mean, maybe not you with Malachi, because you were sort of the benign Silurian doctor, Richard. But all three of you, in a way, have sort of played evil enemies and sort of been brought back to play similar roles, but as the good guys. What's that transition been like?
I loved it.
Yeah.
What else can I say? Because I suppose the thing is, what's really nice about playing characters as well, which have they've been designed with as a template. You know, we're all genetically, all the female Silurians look like me now. Great. I'm in work. So I think there's that, when you can be brought back, you can be a baddie, which is so much fun, running around with ray guns, but then you can be brought back to do exactly the same thing as a good guy and back the Doctor up. It's fantastic fun.
I was going to say the first time I did it, at the end of my first appearance, I was killed. And I did say to them that when they were mooting the idea that you come back again, and I said, but I was killed. And they said, yeah, but this is Doctor Who.
Well, what was your reaction to, you're not only coming back as a goodie and a lizard, but you're married to a lady and you've got a Sontaran butler. Was that all together too much at once?
Yeah, it was amazing, because I think some of that as well came out of after we did A Good Man Goes to War, and all of a sudden there was these 3 characters that you could do all of this with. What was my point?
Yeah, I mean, with A Good Man Goes to War, it's great how people actually sort of, those 3 characters, I mean, even at the read-through, when Vastra and Jenny first appeared, we thought, these are great characters, they should have their own spin-off series in Victorian London and all that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But then obviously Strax sort of was very entertaining to play, because obviously I played evil Sontarans before, but Strax isn't evil, he's just rather confused about most things. And it was great, because obviously Strax dies at the end of A Good Man Goes to War, but he's, initially they didn't tell me quite how he sort of like came back to life, but I found myself sort of being back again at Christmas, which was great.
I was going to say, well, I think audience reaction to the first time they appeared, the Silurians, was so immense that the BBC wanted them back. And thank you. So, you know.
Yeah.
Well, up to you. Now, I mean, because you've become now, Dan, like the definitive. I mean, it was Christopher Ryan who was playing the commander in the Sontaran 2-parter in 2008. Yeah. And you were sort of his lieutenant, but now you were pretty much it.
Yes, I mean, clearly have a cheaper fee than he does. So no, but it's great. I mean, because first of all, I got invited back to threaten. Yeah, David knocked me out with a mallet in David Tennant's very last episode. So that was a little bit of a cameo. But then with Strax, it all sort of really sort of took off as being sort of like the Sontaran. Well, the fact that they're all clones and they've all handily got a gap in their teeth like mine, it just makes it makes it so much easier from my point of view. But it's it's really strange. Someone pointed out to me the other day that I think I've been more Sontarans than anybody else in the series now, which is really quite odd.
I think in general, I think one Sontaran in the 70s actually had a gap between his teeth too. So in my mind, I'd like to draw a connection from your Sontaran back to the ones from the Invasion of Time.
Absolutely, it is a tactical advantage, you see. I can rend flesh.
I mean, what is it like then to be like in Doctor Who, we're just used to Silurians being bad guys and Sontarans being bad guys, and now you're comic sidekicks and you're benign helpers of the Doctor. I mean, it's a weird thing. I mean, how do you sort of play that with all the history that's been going on?
I mean, yeah, I think it's weird, but what I really love is it's like the Doctor has turned us around to the good side, I suppose, and so we then back him up with anything that he does. I just think it's a brilliant way to just turn other stories on their head, make more out of characters rather than them always being the evil ones, that they can sort of change and become better.
The universe does have some good people in it.
Yeah. Oh, yes. What's Matt Smith like working with then? Because you've all worked with him rather closely over the past couple of years at least. What's his energy like and such?
I'd say he's amazing. He's very, very skilled. Works very hard on his lines and is focused every day, but is inventive and quite generous when you're coming up with a scene and how you work. I would have said that with the director as well, you reinvent every scene as it played and given the situation and the location, so and the actors you're with. So I would have said he's a very good Doctor. And I've known Sylvester for a long, long time, but before he was a doctor. So
back when he was still Sylvester.
Yeah, and I worked with him when he was doing stage work as well. So, you know, but I would have said Matt's amazing. Yeah, very bright doctor, and he looks very good and very quick, and it's just slickened up the whole show. Yeah,
you're going to say that, Dan?
Yeah, well, one night, the day before we were filming, I happened to be having a chat with Stephen Moffat and sort of mentioned that I hadn't ever been on the TARDIS control room. And Matt overheard this and sort of went, oh, okay. And then, so like the day after, we were filming, I think, a Victorian street scene. Just in the street was just next to the TARDIS control room. And in between takes, Matt had a word to the lighting guy and sort of said, oh, could you light up the control room? And it's like, oh, Dan, come along with us. And just took me around the new control room and went, here you go, what do you think? And it was just really nice of him to actually sort of invite me onto the set like that. So it's, very nice chap.
We can see from the trailer for the upcoming second half of Series 7 that at least two of you are in. Are you in it as well, Richard?
No, not this. No, not this bit. I was doing theatre. So
oh,
it wasn't free. But, yeah.
Well, what then, Neve and Dan, can you tell us about your upcoming appearance?
I don't know. I don't know how much trouble we'd get into.
Yeah,
the BBC ninjas.
No, they don't mind at all.
I'm trying to think what we can. Well, there's one that I know has been mentioned online, The Crimson Horror, which we're all really looking forward to seeing. So we've only seen tiny little bits of it as we go into revoice sections of it. And I don't know how much I can tell you about it.
Yeah,
basically, it's about a horror that might be crimson.
Yeah.
And I think we can say that that's one. It's got Diana Rigg in it as well, and Rachel
and
Sterling.
a wonderful daughter as well, Rachel Sterling.
And it's Victorian and very cool. And it's also written by Mark Gatiss, who writes good things, as we know.
He does indeed. Yeah. What is the set like then? I mean, the set reporters leak out all the time and such whenever you go on location. Is it like a lockdown atmosphere on a Doctor Who set sometimes to make sure nothing gets out?
I found it really, really weird because the first time that we did it, when they were bringing back the Silurians, because they were bringing them back, they had to keep that so secret. So we were getting in blacked out limos with things chucked over our heads to keep us completely secret, while Matt Smith and everyone else had just wandered about getting photos taken of them in the street. So it's kind of, then when we were coming back, they weren't, because they already knew we were coming back, they weren't as over the top as that. But you would just walk to sets and stuff, and everyone would be out because there's people out scouting to find out where you're filming, and you'd turn up and there'd just be tons of people taking photos. It's amazing.
That's the power of Doctor Who fans. That's the thing, you know. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the convention, and I look forward to seeing you, Dan, in the next series. And Richard, your time will come again, and I look forward to seeing Malachi or some version of the Silurians coming back. Righty. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Neve McIntosh, Richard Hope, and Dan Starkey, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you. Sherlock Holmes. Anyway, that is it for another year. Just a quick few thank yous. Thank you to Sean Lyon for not only giving the slot, but for organizing the best convention in the world. Thanks again to Chip and to Shannon and to Mel and everyone who listens to us and everyone who came here today. Enjoy the convention. This is, as Chip says, your convention. So until next time, I am Stephen in L.A.
Warren in L.A.
And Chris in L.A.
And so long for now.